Welcome back to another episode. It's Wednesday. We've got our first day off of spring training. There are no games being played for the Giants today. They will be back in action against the Dodgers, and it should actually be televised. So that'll be a nice one to watch. On today's episode, what we're going to talk about is how necessary it really is for the Giants to sign another starting pitcher, which I have some thoughts kind of twofold on this one. This is coming off the news that Sean Jelly has suffered a elbow sprain, so he is going to be out for probably a little while. Um, Tristan Beck obviously is not even picking up a baseball for 2 months after having the vascular surgery to repair the aneurysm in his right arm. And Keaton Wynn should be facing hitters again here soon. It seemed like he was about a week or so behind everyone else after having elbow inflammation, but he did have an injury to his right elbow last season that caused him to miss a little bit of time, some inflammation there. So the fact that this has now come up twice in the last year is something to be probably a bit concerned about. So now looking at the Giants' current starting rotation and kind of where I think, or whether or not I think they really absolutely have to go sign another veteran or someone to fill out the rotation. The answer to me really is it just depends on what you're trying to sign. Because do I think they could use Blake Snell or Montgomery on one of these short term, they call them the pillow contracts? Absolutely. If you're going to go get a starter, go get a guy like that. Go get Blake Snell on a couple year deal with opt outs on a high average value salary. Get a guy like that. He could absolutely help the team win now. He would help the team in the playoffs if they get that far, where this team could be someone that no team around baseball is going to want to face in October. If you're trotting out Logan Webb and Blake Snell as your 1-2, and then you have, Harrison, Robbie Ray potentially. We'll see how he does coming back from Tommy John. Cobb is your fifth. So there's that's a very deep rotation with Blake Snell come October. So if you're going to sign a starter, in my opinion, it needs to be a guy of that caliber, a high end guy. And Montgomery, he's not necessarily as good as Snell high end, but he's very reliable. And as he showed in the playoffs this past season, he can be quite a weapon in the postseason as well. So if you can get one of those guys on a short term deal, absolutely sign another starter. But kind of where I fall beyond that is there's a huge drop off after those two guys. The best options among the non-trade candidates, because if you're going to trade for an ace caliber pitcher, again, I'm all for that. I'm all for trying to get more front end guys, but on the free agent market, you're looking at guys like Jake Odorizzi or Michael Lorenzen, which that they are what they are. They're back end of the rotation guys. They're not big innings eaters. Jake Odorizzi's coming off multiple injuries and a bunch of injury prone seasons. He's an intriguing arm for sure. He was really effective and reliable from 2014 through 2019, but we're 5 years removed from that. So it to me, when you look at guys like that, and Lorenzen, again, not a big innings eater, not a he's not throwing you a mid threes ERA. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's gonna have a 4.5 ERA. It just feels like more of the Sean Manaea, Ross Stripling type production. When you look at guys like that, the question for me becomes, uh, do you definitively feel like those two guys are any better than the young pitchers that the Giants could potentially throw out there? And to me, the answer is just a plain and simple no. I feel like the Giants can replicate that production while actually developing their youth, using guys like Landon Roop, Mason Black, even Keaton Wynn, who, as most of you know, I'm not super high on as a starter, but he can be pretty efficient with his pitching. Hayden Birdsong, Carson Wisenhunt. Now, I think Wisenhunt's going to need time. He's coming off the elbow injury. Roop, they're kind of slow rolling a little bit. He's coming off a lower back injury that limited him to 10 starts in Double A last year. Now, he dominated in those 10 starts. Mason Black only has 12 starts in AAA, but there is some, there are plenty of pitchers, with pitching. If you can throw strikes and keep your stuff around the zone and you don't have massive control issues, those guys can make the jump up to the major leagues a lot faster than position players in most situations. The Dodgers showed it a little bit with Emmett Strahan last season, or Sheehan. Bobby Miller, I mean, he was a first round pick, but he made the jump quick. Plenty of pitchers make that jump fast. Mason Black, for instance, doesn't have a ton of control issues. He's averaged in the mid threes on walks per nine. He keeps it around the plate. He can be pretty efficient with his pitch. And he has got a 5-pitch mix that's solid with a really good fastball. A guy like him, yeah, he's not going to win he's not going to be a front end starter, but even if you put him on an 80 to 90 pitch limit, I still think he can give you a solid 5 innings a start. And I know there's concerns right now about running, wearing out the bullpen early and them not being able to handle it deep in the year, having a big repeat of 2023. But I mean, last season we were using openers for 3 out of 5 days for a large chunk of the season. I mean, it was really Webb and Cobb and then an opener. And those openers were going 1 to 3 innings. So if you're getting at least 5 pretty consistently on the other 3 days, or the other 4 days, then you're already ahead of where the Giants were in 2023. So I don't think the pen is going to just fall apart. And not to mention that it's not like we're worried about Mason Black holding up for an entire season. The reality is, with all the options and with these guys, it might be a mixture of these players. Mason Black might make a handful of starts, and then Wynn might make some starts. Whisenhunt may make starts later in the year. Root may make starts. You're going to be mixing these guys in where you're not going to just overwork one guy more than likely. So I look at the Giants right now, and even if we're being on the more pessimistic side, where Cobb might not be back until beginning of June, which there's a lot of people that think he's going to be back end of April even. So we'll see. They're optimistic there. We'll see kind of where that ends up falling. But you're looking at really trying to fill in 2 spots, and I don't think signing Odorizzi or any of these guys is really going to answer the biggest concerns, because honestly, for me, I have more concerns about Jordan Hicks making the transition to a starter than I do Mason Black getting me 5 innings. I think with Hicks's control issues, he's going to be less reliable to get through 5 innings than a guy like Mason Black or Keaton Wynn or, Landon Roop, who is, I don't know how many of you have The Athletic or have been kind of paying attention to the reviews coming out, but Andrew Baggerly wrote an article in The Athletic where he was polling the different catchers and pitching coaches on the Giants and saying who's been the most impressive and has the most impressive pitch and things like that. And as far as most impressive pitcher, Landon Roop's name came out of the mouth of virtually every single catcher and pitching coach there in spring training. He's going to get into a game here soon. I think, he might get into the game against the Dodgers, it sounds like. Welcome to the Bigs. But this is a guy that very well may be ready to pitch at the major league level and contribute as soon as this season and early this season. So I have confidence in guy, and he's a guy with less than 2 walks per 9 in Double-A. I mean, he throws strikes. He's got a good sinker, good curveball, pitch to the defense with a lot of these guys. And the Giants have strengthened the defense, and that is going to go a long way to support these young pitchers. So the answer to my question on whether or not I see, whether or not they need a starting pitcher is it just depends on what kind of pitcher you're getting, because if we're going to go get Blake Snell, do it. If you're going to just go get some back of the rotation guy that's not even really an innings eater, that's probably going to get lit up every other start, then I just don't see the purpose in that, because it's really not going to save your pen anymore. The only thing you're going to be able to point to is, oh, well, it's not a young pitcher and we're not putting a bunch on young pitchers and, things like that, which, it's hard. It's not necessarily a recipe that I would rely on year in and year out, but there have been examples of it being successful. The Giants had a ton of success with a ton of young pitchers in the late in the 2010s. Now, granted, guys like Matt Cain had a ton of experience, and Timmy was coming off his Cy Youngs, but Sanchez and Mad Bum and a lot of these guys weren't very experienced. So it can be done. The A's made the playoffs in 2012, won the division over the Rangers with 5 rookie starting pitchers. There are exceptions to every rule, but the reality is you're not having 5 rookie starters for an entire season. You're going to have some young starters in the very beginning of the season, and then you're going to have guys like Cobb returning, and eventually Robbie Ray. The veterans will be there later in the season. So I don't think it's time to push the panic button there, but I would still absolutely go get Blake Snell if for a 1-year deal or whatever, an opt-out contract, if that's possible. Tell me what you guys think. I'd love to hear the feedback. If you like this, like video, subscribe to the channel. Tell me your thoughts. Uh, Follow me on Twitter at EYD Show. I do post there a decent amount. I love interacting with everybody, so I try and uh, talk with people there in the comments, wherever. So we'll possibly have another one come out tomorrow. We'll kind of see what goes on. Heyman's saying there's some talk that Montgomery and Snell might be close to making their signing deals. So hopefully we get a little more clarity, and we will touch back once we kind of hear on that. But until next time, have a good one.